See, first you do the awkward silence bit, and then you introduce the podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 9 of Creative Corner with your host, Max, that's me. And today we're going to be joined by Denisa. We'll get to her in just a second. For those of you that don't know what Creative Corner is, or just need a little bit of a recap of what this podcast is about, it's about bridging the gap between leaving a place of study and finding that first job within the creative industry, whether that be a freelance role or a agency role or anything that comes under that. So my guest today is Denisa, as I mentioned before. So Denisa, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, who you are and what you do.
Hi, my name is Denisa. I live in the UK. I work as a graphic designer, and I'm a part-time illustrator, but really just not working much freelance, really just working in my full-time job, and I'm a lot all-around creative person.
Decent. So Denisa, I think this is for people that have been on the podcast before. A lot of them I know from uni, and you're one of the guests that I also know from uni. So in terms of creativity, where did that start for you? Was that something before uni? Was it always something that you wanted to go into? Was it do you have like a specific memory as a kid, or how did you discover like graphic design and illustration?
I think it started off when I was a kid, and it was always just redrawing photos. I feel like that used to be a thing like 10, 15 years ago. That's the one thing that, kids did. Redrawing, whether it's anime or just like pictures of celebrities. That used to be my thing. Mm-hmm. And it was just experimenting with a ton of media. Then it was moving on to doing blog design. Me and my group, we used to all have just blogs, personal blogs, where we either shared something we really cared about or just random like diary entries almost.
Okay.
And you could design the blog however you wanted, like add the images, backgrounds, sidebars, everything. Mm-hmm. So I either did it for them and myself. So I think that's where I really started into the more graphic-y creative bit, I guess. I don't think I was ever really like illustrative, more like I drew what I saw and I designed things on top of that. But right. I never knew how to draw things at the top of my head. Like I couldn't, if I imagine something, I never understood how people just draw something they see in their head. But I think that comes along. Later on, I never thought graphic design I didn't know that was a career. I didn't ever think that something creative would be a job. So during my college, there was not really anything. Obviously, we had like an art class or something, but that really wasn't that important. But I was gonna actually go study teaching in English and maths, but I didn't even bother applying to the university. I ended up just moving to the UK, applying there for graphic design, which obviously worked out. But again, it's not anything I ever thought was real, and it felt. I think there were some private universities in Czech Republic, which is where I'm from, that actually did have design, but I seemed kind of like, if I'm already going to be paying for it, I might as well move out, right? Move abroad, go all out, which was a great decision, obviously, by now. But I guess it's interesting how I never thought this would happen. I never realized that this was a career in general. And I think, sorry, go on.
Yeah. So in terms of like graphic design, then like how, like finding the course, was it something that you studied prior, or is it just like that sounds fun? Can I make a career out of this? Where's that connection between sort of like learning to just redraw things and then actually like taking it to a place of study?
It started with there was like this massive university fair where you could go. Well, they were all mainly in Czech Republic, so we just we went around and saw what each uni was focusing on. There was this group of people who actually help you move into the UK and like study there, and they had a ton of brochures for like each university that was represented there. They had those brochures with like all the different courses they do, UCAS points you need for them, stuff that you've probably seen as well. And I think I just took all of them, and I was just browsing all of them at home. And it was just me stumbling upon graphic design illustration, and then it was just me like thinking I was going to do purely illustration, and then it was just talking to my parents about it, seeing what they think, because they've never been against it. They didn't care. Honestly, they were just like, as long as you can, pay for your rent, cool, we don't care, pretty much.
Wow.
They were not too worried about it. but they did say that illustration sounds like something you're not very comfortable with, or what's the word? Skilled in, I guess, enough for you to have a job out of it, or at least they couldn't imagine it. So that's why I went with actually both graphic design and illustration, with illustration just being joint or minor. I don't know. I think I did both at the end of the day, and changed throughout the course.
Yeah.
So I think it was just this. It was not even a slow build. I think it was just a random jump of, hey, this sounds cool, and like you said. Yeah, that's it.
It's interesting because having seen your work, particularly more so in third year than the other 2 years, your graphic work is very illustrative based. So it's kind of weird how you said, like, you know, parents didn't really think that illustration was, like, I wasn't very skilled in it or wasn't very confident with it, and then seeing like your final outputs for the third year, and they all, like, you were learning to, didn't you draw them like digitally using like Procreate and stuff like that? So and just how you come on.
If you really want to, I think I've got them here. This is accidental. I just have the board here, but it's like, you know, this type of illustration.
Yeah, it's interesting how you developed that skill, even though sort of you wanted to study graphic design, but sort of also built this skill of illustration up and found a way to incorporate the two together. You said before, like, you didn't really see that happening, but can you sort of like unpack that a little bit? Like, was there points of like across uni where you were experimenting with different styles? Like, was there a style beforehand that you developed then, or was it just like I came to uni and just found it?
Right. I think, well, it's weird because I've never really done anything illustrative like that. And I used to just do a lot of like collage with like Photoshop editing more than anything. I was a master of Photoshop. Now I can't even do it. But I think it was just a progress of, during uni especially, just seeing all these different briefs that we had and really pushing me to try something completely different, especially I think in first year. They just really ask you to do different stuff. At least especially illustration classes, it was just pushing for that experimentation. And I think that's where I started. And then it was just a ton of Instagram inspiration. And I've always had a bit of, I guess, how to say it, talent for color. I don't know why. I always saw colors in a natural way. Like, you know, I know kind of pairs together well. Like, you know, color palettes really speak to me. And if I see one, if anything, I see the idea of it now. Like, I see what image it can be, instead of thinking of the image first and colors later. So I think that's why these illustrations that are just so heavy in like that one color palette style, I think that's how I slowly developed that. But in my first and second year, I was nowhere near that. I never understood how people could build their own style. You know, where do you even start? There's so many, and like, do you have to experiment with them all to even find yours, or does it just happen? This was purely an accident. I don't know how. In third year, there was a brief, like multiple briefs, and I started doing the same thing. I was just drawing digitally. I was drawing flat colors, and I just focused on one individual color palette that was quite restricted, like only 4 tones or so. And I think that's where I started. And just like each brief, I kept going to this. And even though teachers were sometimes like, you know, try something else, try some texture, and it's just, I get you trying to push me to experiment, but by that point, it was just the thing I was the most comfortable with. And I guess that's where I kind of found my style in a way. But that's the only progression I guess I could see, because I've never tried it like that. But I think it just naturally happened with all the different briefs that we had.
Was there so sort of like as you're starting this, was it like, did you instantly feel confident with it, or did you just like try it one day and then you fell in love with that style and then decided to continue it because it just felt natural in a way?
Right. I think before Procreate, it was, when it came to drawing, I always tried to do flat colors with like Copics. I always loved the idea of, I think it's when I saw them first time, like Copics, alcohol markers. I saw the flat printed like style that I had, or the look to it. And I really love that. I guess as a designer, you like to see the flat colors instead of too much texture. Obviously, that depends on the person. But that really looked like illustrative style that I, as a designer, could do. That's not too like children's book. It's not too experimental. It's not too crafty. So it just felt, I guess, the most natural to me because of that. So Yeah, I get it's really just that. I think it was not much experimentation, more than just as I went, it just made sense. As you know, as a designer, it just was the one thing that really clicked with me.
Interesting about like finding comfort and then like looking at the style and thinking, actually, like this is what I really like. Is it's quite odd, because like my own style is sort of was found that way a little bit as well, because I was looking at like these minimalist sort of style illustrations and poster designs, and I started doing that like a little bit myself. It wasn't necessarily because I found comfort in it; it's because I wanted to try it out. Because I was like I love like these like flat like stencil cut out shapes that I saw doing like on these like different like film posters and that sort of thing, and just like a completely different take on what I'd seen already. And I was like, that's really different. How can I do something different like that? And I think that inspired the sort of style that I try and aim to do now. But as well as vector illustration, which I think I've mentioned before in a podcast, where it's like, it's almost calming for me to do vector illustration. It's nice to like just get up an image and just trace it out as like some flat color, or just outline it and then just see how that looks. And there's something as well, because obviously you've used Procreate on the iPad, so I take it you have the Apple Pencil as well, right? Yeah. So I think that there's something about sitting down with whatever it might be. It could be pen and pencil, you could be tracing over something, it could be graphics tablet, it could be iPad and the Apple Pencil as well, and like physically doing it. It almost sets you in this like trance. I find that you can just you just do it. You don't really need to think about it at all. I don't know.
I get that.
Yeah.
No. I think it makes sense. I don't know. Yeah, as you said, there's something easy about just like, essentially it's almost like we're kids and we're back in our coloring books again. It feels that simple, but of course you can still create amazing work with that. But there is something really peaceful about it, without having to worry about, I don't know, maybe shadows, or necessarily like, texture, depth, trying to make it look 3D. The fact that we don't have to make that a style, I think, is very comforting.
Is like worrying about, like, because you mentioned shading and stuff. And when I first started vector illustration, I didn't do any shading at all, and now I do like some. Is there like a process in which you sort of like approach a drawing? Is it like you'll do like outlines first, then fill it with color, then decide if it needs shading, or only shade like parts of it? Like what is that process from? Like maybe it's like a sketch, or how does that work for you?
Right. I feel like I've been really jumping around between processes, because now I'm trying to think back to design. And for example, for those, the building drawings, it was a lot of tracing because you wanted the building to look good. But I didn't bother with sketches. I thought that color blocking immediately would make the most sense because I find that when you do an outline, you then have to worry about the blank space that the outline either leaves, or which color do you assign to each line almost. So that's why I found it easier to work straight up with just blocks, just colors and nothing else really. But now in my spare time, I do a lot of painting, but I still stick to that very flat style. But this time I actually do have a sketch, because obviously it's easier, because now that I'm actually trying to come up with ideas on my own and I'm not tracing really. I do have a sketch to work off, but I don't outline it either. It's again back into that straight coloring in book style.
It just reminded me of in Amsterdam, David Hockney had a lot of inspiration from Vincent van Gogh, and in the Vincent van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam, David Hockney did a exhibition of him sort of adding his like really bright and awesome colors, and combining that with Vincent van Gogh's sort of like dotted style almost, like these beautiful brush strokes and that sort of thing. And there was a book printed as well to go along with this exhibition. And Hockney in the book talks about like the idea of like picking up an iPad and like trying out a different style, because he's worked with very different mediums throughout his entire life. And now towards the end of his life, he's picked up like this technology that can draw, different colors. You can add texture afterwards. You can, go back and, redo a brush stroke. And it was like, it adds like a whole new level of detail and something that he had never discovered before. And that's why he found it so fun, because it was like a new experiment for him. He was doing like the same stuff that he already learned as throughout his life, and just applying it to this new technology and this new style of thinking, because it added like a completely new layer. And I think that's something that's quite interesting, where we as designers, we get stuck in like, using pencil and paper to sketch out, or and then once we've got a sketch, we take it straight to Illustrator, and then after Illustrator we might then decide to screen print it perhaps, but it very rarely that actually happens. So what were your thoughts on like trying out like different mediums and stuff?
Right, it's actually been my process for like the last year or so, because I've honestly not done any actual design like in Illustrator or anything like that since university. I think it's because like I studied it for it to be a job, so now it's my job. But I think in my spare time, I still feel like a kid, making those illustrations, either tracing or just drawing something that I've seen. And now that's become my free time, and I really like that separation. But when it comes to because of that, because I had like essentially since I was like 15, I had no experience in like drawing traditionally, and I've forgotten all of that anyway. So I've tried a lot of different things. I've tried watercolor. I've tried just sketching, alcohol markers, all that stuff. And it was really tough anyway. Like each time I just try, swatching my colors, trying a little drawing, does it work with outlines? Does it not? And it's a really long process, I find. Now I've stuck with one medium, that is gouache. And again, same thing. I've done so many swatches. I've tried so many different like formats. Do I like clean borders? Do I like sketches? Do I like outlines? And it seems like such a tedious process, and sometimes you might feel like that's a waste of time. But I find that if you end up actually drawing something you enjoy without having to look back on it and being like, I should have worked on that a bit more, I feel like it's worth it. Mm-hmm. Even though it feels like you've gone through 20 pieces of paper drawing the same thing with just, a little bit of variation. Mm-hmm. Because I find that, like you mentioned, with all these brushstrokes, right, and the texture you can add, especially digitally, it's so crazy that's why I feel like I stick to the basic color blocks, maybe do shading with just like literally mixing up a little bit darker color, just so I can draw manually. But because you can do so much, I feel like that's why I try to simplify it, because it can be really overwhelming, the technology we have, and like it's so easy to draw. You don't even have to own all the medium. You don't have to buy the most expensive paint anymore. You can just use digital brushes that look really convincingly real.
Yeah, it's insane like how that's come across, and in terms of what Adobe are doing as well is just like with each innovation and each update seems to add like this whole other level of of whether it be like new tools or like you like mentioned about textures, and you can download different brushes and that sort of thing, and having that like really accessible to whether you're an experienced designer or maybe if you're like just getting into it. Do you think there's maybe a bit of fear when like a designer first opens up Illustrator or first opens up Procreate or whatever it might be? Because I know when I first opened up Photoshop in A levels, and when I first opened up Illustrator in first year of uni, I was shitting myself at the amount of tools that there were.
Oh my god, 100%.
Yeah, what's an ellipse tool? I don't know what an ellipse tool is, or how do I add what's a radial blur? Do you reckon that sort of can scare newcomers away, or do you reckon there's sort of a way to?
I find that when I started, I worked with the worst program. It was like a Photoshop, but it was a free version of it, but it had like barely any tools. It was really bad. But the thing is, that was back in the day when I was creating blog designs and all that. But somehow I've really made it work. And once you master a really simple tool, I find that's when I got Photoshop and I tried working in it. It was a bit easier because the tools are similar, because every image editing tool is going to have the same things really. you can't really invent that many new tools. But it's really about starting like that, especially with something like Adobe. You get to choose what workspace you'd like. You can always go with basic. Start off with basic or just like the painting one, because I find those very simple. As the panels that pop up don't sound like a bunch of foreign words. It's just quite like, there's your brush, there's your color, there's your selection tool. You're good. And I say start off really small, because honestly, even now, I don't know half of the tools in Photoshop or Illustrator. Every now and then I see like a video and someone uses something absolutely bizarre that I've never seen. I'm
exactly the same. I'm exactly the same.
Yeah, this could have saved me hours of work. I never knew about it, and yes, there it is. And that happens all the time, but I think that's guaranteed.
Yeah, there was something I was doing. I was doing some work on the other day. I forgot how to do something in Photoshop regarding like a custom text box. And the guy that was I was watching this tutorial, he was like, okay, so now go to this tool and do this. And I was like, I've never used that tool before. That's to save me like 5 minutes on each design that I do now. And it's like you go to a tutorial to watch one to find out one thing, and you end up finding out like 6 other things because of like this experienced designer. And I think even now, like when I open up Illustrator or whatever it is I'm going to be working in, there's always like first of all, what I love about creative software is that there's always more than one way to do something. Like if you need to, there's either like a command shortcut to do it. You can go through it manually, or you can do like something else with a different tool that will do the exact same effect, but it might create a path rather than an actual shape or something like that. And just experiencing that, and then also even now, and I bet even illustrators and designers and everybody that uses these softwares does in their daily basis, is like, okay, there's a tool I didn't know existed and now it does. That's changed my entire life. Why didn't I not know about this sooner? But without that sort of like build up to that moment of discovering that tool or using that tool another way, or whatever it might be, you wouldn't have discovered it in the first place. So it's sort of like
100%.
Yeah. So it's sort of like
No, sorry.
It's all right. Just like the idea of like discovery and I don't know really where my point's going here, but I just love that you can just sort of have something for years on end and pay for it years on end, and use it, but still there's always something new to be discovered.
I've actually recently switched to Affinity, both Affinity Photo Designer and Publisher that they've now released, and I'm a big fan. I'll say that first. But they also have these workbooks that they sell, and I got one of them for the Publisher, the essentially InDesign equivalent. And the thing is, I have still not looked into the book until I really, I guess, need it. But the fact that they show you exactly how to do everything is exactly the opposite of what you just mentioned. And I feel like it really takes away a lot. Like, it's like I need to find that journey myself. I need to go on it. I need to actually manually learn it, because if you just read a bunch of shortcuts, even if you have them printed out, if you just learn about a bunch of tools that do a ton of stuff, you're not going to remember anything. And I think it's still the best thing is to just do a small project, or work on something that you've been working on for a while. Just try it out, see, and if you struggle, again, go online. I'll look into the book. But it's crazy. There's so much hidden in these softwares, and you can't even imagine. I remember we had the web design class. I think you were in it as well. And Sam, our teacher, was just like, yes, I'm like really, really good at Photoshop, but the 3D section, not a clue what that's about. And that's probably most people. You find your own little bit, and that's it. You stick to it. There's no reason in finding all the other tools.
Yeah, you're like, if again, like coming back to the idea of style as well. Like if you have a certain style, you're only going to use certain tools for that style. Now, occasionally you might, delve deep into, the type tools and, how to do 3D type and how to, transform that into, whether you want to like outline it and then transform into like a graphic of its own, just an example. But again, like you say, I remember him saying that in one of the lectures. So it's like, I think it sort of made us realize that, you can be an expert in your field without knowing all the tools, because the tools are there if you need them. But there's also, like I said earlier, there's always more than one way of doing things. So don't worry if you haven't used it yet, because chances are you might chances are you might actually pick it up on the way anyway. We've spoken a lot about process and your style and how you've sort of like developed that over time. Is there a way that you get into the zone when you need to design something? Like if you need to get on with something, maybe you've got a deadline approaching, like is there a way that you can sort of sit down and get yourself in that zone, or is it like a level of procrastination and a bit of work, a bit of Netflix on the side, how does that work for you?
So in terms of my job with actual design, I don't struggle with focusing, because obviously I just sit there for 8 hours and I do my job and I enjoy it. It's really good, and I don't struggle focusing because it's I work as an in-house designer, so it's focusing on the same color palette. You focus on the same branding, so it's fairly easy to do your job, and you don't have to learn about new techniques. You don't have to try different mediums or anything like that. And I find that really easy to do. But when it comes to my personal life, and I just like draw for fun, I don't necessarily do freelance. I've done only like 2 commissions or so after uni, but now it's because these are really like just passion projects, and it's something I really want to do. So there's really no deadline, but I feel bad if I haven't done anything for a while. But the only thing, I've tried it, I think it was New Year's, and I felt like, I haven't really drawn in a while. It feels like this is like a nice memory to draw down. It's going to take me like only an hour. And I drew something and I hate it. It looks horrible. And I did it because it was like, it's not, it's going to be midnight soon. I really need to get this down. And every time I see that, like I put all the drawings in my little portfolio, and I hate this so bad. I just want to take it out and redraw it, which I probably will do. But it really, that specific experience taught me how it's not worth pushing that flow if you really don't want to do it. Obviously, I understand if you have a deadline and it's like an actual job that you have to do. But I find that if I really feel like I'm pushing myself and forcing myself to draw something, there's no point, because I'm just gonna be resentful of my own hobby. So I just tend to, if I feel like this kind of like slow way to burn out, I do something completely different. I either game for a while, or binge the whole day, watch something on the side, or read a book. Just really try to do something completely different that doesn't require me creating. Really, it's just following something that you already have in front of you. And I find that so much easier that, like, for example, the next day or in like 3 days, I feel so much better about drawing, and I actually really want to sit down and I can't wait to do it. But with when I had the, for example, commission project, I think it's because I was just I really tried to plan everything out, and obviously the deadline was you have to do it or you're not getting paid. I guess there was motivation enough,
right?
But because it was just a bunch of drawing again, like on Procreate, so I think it was just trying to make a really comfortable atmosphere for myself. If that is surrounding myself with like drinks that I enjoy, like, just having a hot tea, or just, I don't know, having some biscuits, fruit, whatever, maybe a TV show on the side as well. If that's what I needed for that comfort to actually do my job, that was fine, because once I actually got into it, I felt like blitzing through all of the tasks.
Right.
But yeah, that might come naturally. That might come to some people really difficult, but it's quite difficult to give advice on it in a way.
Yeah, it's odd, isn't it? Because as creatives, like, we all have our different processes and our ways of thinking and our different styles that we want to develop and work to. And it's odd because, like, finding that flow state is going to be very different for everybody. Like, do you need to meditate beforehand? Do you need to do a load of sketches first and then leave it for the day and then come back later, or do you design really late at night? And I think it's about trying out different things and knowing that some things are going to work better than others, and some things you're gonna flat out just not like at all. And
the one thing I could say is, don't be the person you think you want to be, which I know. But I remember at uni, I used to always be like, I used to work really good at night. My first year, I had this one project that I really enjoyed, and I stayed up till like 3 a.m. just to finish it, just to have it ready early. And I was like, whoa, that's really me. But as third year came, and as I go, in my job and everything, in my free time, I hate the idea of working in the evening. And it's like, I feel like I really have to push myself. And it's fine to change. It's fine to change your habits. And if you feel like this is just not working for you, change it.
Definitely. I really like that you brought up, like, especially for uni students, because I feel like more so in first year and second year, I was like, okay, I was trying to be this person that I didn't want to be, almost. I didn't really have like aspirations, or like I didn't really know. I was sort of going to wait for third year to roll around and then just figure out from there. And then like I just started to like discovering like different like lifestyles, and like reading books on inspiration and creativity, and it's sort of like trying to disagree with some things if I didn't fully agree with it, and then sort of agreeing with other things and be like, okay, so do I need to incorporate this in my life? Can I benefit from this? And I think like going forward now as well, especially after uni, you are going to be meeting people that have very different upbringings, very different styles, very different goals, very different values to you. And you've got to be that person to say, you got to like take a step back and actually look at yourself and say, okay, so this person's different to me, but that's okay because they're doing it their way and I'm doing this my way. We're going to disagree on things, and that's fine. That's human nature.
Definitely. That's really important to realize, because it's obviously so easy nowadays with Instagram to just compare yourself, and everyone will tell you don't do that, right? And that's cool. I know, it's really easy to say, but I, for example, go to Instagram for inspiration, and it's amazing. I've got so many ideas through that. But of course, you will see people doing this, and now it's like making me doubt the way I'm doing things. And now, because of that, not quite recently actually, I've been doing a lot of experimentation to see whether does their style just look good to me, or do I really want to do it? And then it's like, you don't want to become someone you just see on Instagram. You don't want to copy them, of course, and not even just because of copyright or anything, but just do how you like it. And I know that it's really common, if you see like this massive trend on Instagram, you feel like everyone's doing it and it looks good, it means I have to do it too, right? But not necessarily. But it's really difficult to escape that.
For sure. You mentioned this drawing at New Year's Eve. What was it about it that you didn't like, and how did you combat that, or how might you combat that in the future to be like, not necessarily to like love everything you do, but in terms of like what was it that you didn't like about it, and how might you solve it in the future, whether you change it or you do it in a different way? Like, what's your process for that?
I think with that one specifically, I rushed it, and obviously that's a mistake. The colors were wrong. I just feel like the tones were just, I don't know, the contrast was off. The colors were just like really quickly put together. It just didn't look good. It was just a quick idea. I didn't even think about the composition of the piece, nothing. It was just like, yeah, cool, two things next to each other, draw, done. And it's when it's done so quickly and so poorly. It's like, because I'm drawing essentially like, memories. I'm drawing things I want to remember, because I find that really pleasant to draw, and it's like one way to commemorate what happened back in the past, memories that you want to cherish, while also drawing something you love, so you actually have some passion for it. So this was just like, a memory that I wanted to cherish, and it's like, I'm making it horrible by doing this. It's like, is this how I want to remember it? Rushed and just horribly done? Of course not. So the point is, obviously, I can always do it later. I'm not going to forget it in 2 days or 3. So, the fact that I can either wait or redo it is a good way to feel about it, because I don't feel like this is a crazy deadline that, I have to submit this and it has to go on. I think the pressure that's come off of me as well is the fact that I don't post things on Instagram. I don't really want to. Maybe at some point I will, but I find that if I know that this is not going to have to go on Instagram, it's not going to have to look perfect, it's not going to have to be a good photo or a drawing, as long as it means something to me, that's good. That's good enough. And it doesn't have to be seen by tons of people for it to look good or for it to be good to me. So I think it's been a lot of that, realizing, because I feel like during our third year, it's been this build up your social presence, have a good portfolio online. And I understand that if you really want to be a freelancer, that's really important. But if you just really want to do your hobby, you don't have to show it off. You don't need other people's validation that what you're doing is great or it's good.
Really good points there about being confident in your own work, and whether it's just like not feeling the need to share it and that sort of thing. And I think that, again, like you mentioned with social media, people are pressured to sort of be the best, and try and do what everybody else is doing and try and like fit into this sort of like trend. And it's okay if you don't fit into that trend, because if you're just doing your own thing. You mentioned about not posting to Instagram because you didn't really want to. Do you feel a bit of like pressure from social media to try and like post your best work?
Yeah, exactly. That's the biggest problem. I don't know why. I kind of want to go off of social media. Maybe start a completely new one with a name that no one knows. I think, obviously, people follow you, and they have they probably don't care about any of this. But in your head, you feel like they know you. They have some expectations. If they're your classmates, they've seen your work before. They expect either the same standard or better by now, right? Because you've had time to I don't know, get better. But it's all of these little things that just get in my head, and it's like, what's the point? Few likes literally do nothing to me. I don't even do it for that. So why do I even need to? Do I get anything from that Instagram post that I don't get from just putting it on my wall? Probably not. If anything, on the Instagram, probably never going to see it again, because it's going to be on my feed if I post a lot, and I'm never going to look at it. If I have it, in my house, have it on my wall, I see it more often. Cool. I probably will get more out of it than maybe having 2 people comment that looks great. I guess I just got over that validation from other people, because I don't even care if it looks good. If I had fun and if it means something to me, that's it. That's all I really need.
Yeah, I'm sort of in the same mind with you. Like, I discovered, particularly in 3rd year, end of 2nd year of university, like that, I just wasn't enjoying being on social media. So like I don't have like the Twitter app and the Facebook app. I don't have on my phone. Like I have accounts for them, but I don't really use them as such anymore. So like the same with Instagram. Like with I have 2 design. I have a design Instagram and then a personal Instagram. And when I sort of discovered for my personal Instagram, I was like showing pictures of friends or like day trips or whatever. And once I discovered it, that I was like, okay, I'm not getting any validation from people liking it or commenting on it. So what am I really doing it for? So I started to cultivate it into something where it's like, okay, what if I just do this for myself? So I'm posting it as sort of like a diary or a journal, where it's like, okay, so on this day you had this day out with these people and they made it amazing. And then you can look back in, 6 months, a year's time, whenever it might be, and remember that and look at those photos and say, oh, look at that piece of art that I saw, or this beautiful building that I might have saw from a certain city, or I spent the day doing this with someone that I don't really spend a lot of time with. You can sort of like appreciate what you did do. I don't know, I think it was like 2018 in January, I think I took myself to Oxford. I'd been to Oxford once before, and I was like, I've got a day off. I had no lectures at uni or anything like that. I don't think university had like started back for like that semester yet. So I was like, okay, got this full day. I've got a bit of like disposable income. Let's just go somewhere random for the day. I'll take my sketchbook with me. I'll take my laptop and just see what happens. Just spent the day like wandering around Oxford, and then I had a free hour like towards the end of the day, and I started doing some sketches for my dissertation work. And it was just like a completely different change of scenery, different people, different atmosphere, eating out and like going to these different places and just generally just taking in a new environment. I don't know what it was. It sort of like really kicked my creativity, and just it was almost like a relaxing experience, but also like an experience where it was like, okay, so what happens if we start sketching in the library, and what happens if we start sketching if you just get your sketchbook out and you just sit on a bench in the middle of town somewhere and just start sketching and see what happens. What feelings does that invoke? What are you getting any inspiration from somewhere else? Is there more distracting? Is it less distracting? And just doing that sort of experiment, I fully recommend if you guys, and if anyone listening wants to like just, obviously you can't really do it right now because lockdown and all that good stuff, but at some point just take yourself out of your office, out of the work office, out of your house just for a day, and just see what happens. And take a little sketchbook with you, and note down things that you find beautiful, or maybe if someone walks by you they're on a phone and they say like a funny comment, write that funny comment down and just see what happens, and just see what things you pick up on, and what things you might just appreciate the world around you, because that's what it's there for, right?
I think that's really wholesome.
Thanks.
No, I think that's such a sweet experience, and especially with the Instagram being like almost like your little scrapbook. I really like that.
It is a scrapbook, isn't it? It's a digital scrapbook. Right?
I was always thinking about doing that, but I don't take enough. Or like I just don't like sharing that much personal life, I guess. But that's what I'm doing with my drawings. Essentially, I'm considering that my kind of little journey, because I date them every time. And I'm thinking of like, making them smaller, printing them on my little, like, for example, 2020, what happened? Like, in drawings. But I like, when people use Instagram for that. It's a really nice way to look back. And that's such a great idea. I would love the idea of just, going somewhere just to try something else. And not even necessarily for drawing, but just getting new experiences and having something new to take inspiration from, like you said.
Yeah, for sure. And it's something I did a few times, but like the other few times that I did, I actually took friends with me as well, because I was like, right, what's everyone doing tomorrow? Do you want to go to this place tomorrow? Train tickets are this much. We can go here, spend the whole day, and then come back. And if your friends are like willing to do it and they've also got nothing better to do, then just experience it. Because even if they think they might not enjoy it, they might actually get some value out of it, and you might have an experience together you've never had before, and you might not get that for a long time. And just try and be open to discovering new things and trying out new things and immersing yourself in different places that you wouldn't have otherwise gone to. I think that's just important as creatives, and also just as human beings as well.
Definitely.
Just having a look at time here. What time are we on? Okay, cool. So we've spoken a lot about your process and that sort of thing, and how start to finish. And what we haven't spoken about is inspirations. Is there any people or styles that you are taking inspiration from? Where does that? Who are they, or what?
So, as what are they? I have a massive Trello board that is just filled with ideas on what to draw, either then digitally, with gouache, or I don't know, any other different type of crafts or whatever. I've got way too many ideas. Literally 167 last time I counted. It's getting out of hand. And it literally just comes and goes to me. Like, I finish a piece and suddenly I think, what if I did it like this, but in this different way? Like, what if I take this idea, like this theme, this idea, and transform it? And like, once usually I finish a piece, I have 3 more ideas. So my ideas are just never ending, which is a bit of a problem. But I really take inspiration from my life. And the thing is, I don't do a lot of adventurous stuff. I don't really travel. First, not that we can now, but even before that, I don't think I've really traveled much. But I really cherish memories that I have with like people I care about, or very specific experiences that were just fun. And there's something about it. There's something about going back to that memory and just like seeing it again, but this time through a hand, if that makes sense. So just drawing that out really means a lot to me, because like I'm really reinforcing that specific memory really means a lot to me, and I get to see it again. Because I feel like when I draw something that is personal, I relive it again, essentially. But when it comes to people, I follow quite a few people on Instagram or YouTube and stuff. My favorite one is at I'm a Wonder, also known as Tina Tran. She does stunning gouache illustrations. She mainly draws people, but she also has a YouTube channel. And she's such an inspiration to me with the way she works with the medium, but also her process, everything about it, everything she talks about. And I find just these people who really don't worry about it too much. They just, they show their bad sketches. They show their process. They're happy, to talk about everything. They don't feel like keeping anything a secret about the ugly side of art. I really appreciate that. And I like, obviously her style is really attractive to me. Like, I really love looking at it. So that's why I've chosen her, for example. But I love when people are like that, at least upfront with their art, because a ton of us just want to post our favorite work and like, get all the likes and, look like you know what you're doing at all times. But that's not true. But it comes from loads of these people. Ton of my ideas, or that just come up from, honestly, games, TV shows, anything I see on the internet, life.
Seems to be pulling inspiration from a lot of places, from just literally all around, which I think is great, because there's a designer called Colin Jenkinson, and he came into our university to a talk, and one of the things he sort of really hammered down was like, you need to look for inspiration in unexpected places. So, which basically just means like anywhere you look could be some inspiration to be like I'm looking in front of me right now. I've got a lamp in front of me, and the angle of the stand, could be used for a sort of an angle on our logo, perhaps, or something like that. Just as a shit example.
Oh my god. Reminds me of the same thing. I remember just being on a bus, and the way the sunset light was just hitting that house, that specific brick house, just looked so beautiful. And it's these little things that you just catch. And the thing is, you don't even get to take a picture. It's such a fleeting moment that sometimes comes to you, and you just think about that, and you're like, yeah, maybe that could be its own thing.
Interesting you mentioned about you can't take a picture, and this is something that I've discovered because I've recently gone through like photos from university and that sort of thing, and things I took photos of, and I was like, okay, yes, it was beautiful when I saw it, but now I see the photo, it's not as beautiful. And something that I want to train myself to do is just appreciate the moment rather than just pull out my phone and take a picture of it.
Definitely.
I remember like traveling, or if I see like a pretty sunset or something like that, I'm just going to appreciate it rather than take a photo of it, because I don't know. I just think for me, it's just like this is a moment. You don't necessarily have to capture every single moment, within your life.
I agree with that so much, but at the same time, I'm so conflicted, because it feels like, yes, it's beautiful. I like the idea of living in the moment, but when I think about it, I had so many moments in university that I've now completely forgotten, and I have no clue what they were. And it's just people around me that remind me. I'm like, I have no clue that happened, and that's kind of like getting to me, right? So the idea of taking a picture of something like that is, as much as it's sometimes an overkill, to me, it's more like, not look at the photo as, yes, that was such a beautiful moment, but it's more like a reminder. And again, me back to the fact that I look at my old photos or something I remember and I just redraw it. I think that's why, if I didn't take a photo, if I don't have any idea of what happened, and if I forget it and there's no other way to remind myself, I would probably forget that moment and probably have no way of capturing it again. But that's, again, my obsession with memories and wanting to recapture them 70 times. So each their own, obviously.
Yeah, obviously. And with that, I'm going to move over to the recommendation section of this podcast. So myself, and also I think Denisa has a book as well. So my book this week hasn't really, we've not really spoken about a lot about like sort of like brands and having a purpose and that sort of thing. But something like a book that I recommend. Sorry, let me start again. A book that I read during my dissertation research was a book called Do Purpose by David Hiett, and its subheading is Why Brands with a Purpose Do Better and Matter More. And he speaks about the idea of, if you are going to create a brand, make it sure it has a purpose, because therefore it can do better, rather than just being a brand to make money. It's a brand with like a why almost, and then how that can cultivate into something a little bit more special than just one conglomerate company that it's just its sole purpose is to make money. If there's a story there, or if there's certain values there, and there's a physical purpose for that brand to exist, then it will do better at its job. There are some great things in here about different companies that do this, and just like different ideologies that you can use on your own brand, and just sort of like make you think about how some of these might apply to brands that you know and love, and how maybe if you're starting your own brand or are working on a certain design, how you can sort of get the deeper thinking involved in there while you're designing. So yeah, Denisa?
Yes, my book is not very creative. It's the book called Ikigai, which is the Japanese secret to a long and happy life. And as you can see, I've got a ton of notes, right? That's how much, that's how impactful this book is.
Yeah.
It's because I've talked a lot about the balance, having keeping to yourself, really being yourself and, not lying about who you are, essentially, not trying to be who you're not. And I think this book really, not necessarily talks about that, but I always struggle with, why am I doing things? What's the purpose behind these things? And sometimes there's none, but that's okay. But I find that this book really grounds me in a way that life doesn't have to be this grand thing. It can be really simple and you can still be happy. You don't have to have crazy lives like, you see on YouTube, on Instagram. And I find that really comforting. In this book especially, it's about how it's never too late to start. It's about people who in their 80s and 90s have started painting and selling their drawings or, whole paintings. And it's just beautiful to read about how it's never too late for you to start something. If you feel like you might want to be creative, but you're in your 20s and you feel like it's too late because you should have started when you're young. It's not true. Don't worry about ever picking up a new hobby, however old you are. And this book is just one of the things that really reinforces that.
Yeah. All right, cool. Thank you for sharing. I really like the idea of, being comfort in your own self, and to be like, if you want to try something out, just try it out. And life doesn't end at 25, so let's not pretend that it does. Which I think, like we've spoken, with our themes on social media and this podcast, is like, don't try and be your best self, because the truth is nobody's actually, it's all a facade, really, like for the most part, at least. So Denisa, on to our next question for you, which is kind of open. In terms of the creative industry and what you've experienced so far, how do you think it will change within the next few years?
For myself personally, or in general, just the whole
both.
thing?
Why not both?
Okay. It's weird because I feel like I have no clue what's happening in the industry. I've really separated myself from it because I don't want to chase trends. Today I actually accidentally stumbled upon, trends in 2021. It's this 3D images, this very specific glass-like look. And it's like, but why do you have to necessarily specify that? Does that mean that every brand is now going to chase after these? And I know this is always going to be a thing. There's always going to be trends, but I don't know, I just find that a bit obsessive. I just, do what you feel is right. I know that, for example, again, nowadays there's been a massive push for minimalist logos, right? I feel like once everyone has minimalist logos, you're not gonna recognize one brand from the other, and sometimes it's gonna take away from that personality. Sometimes less is not more, and maybe think about what you're doing, and think about whether you're doing it for the trend or whether you're doing it for the right reasons. Does it actually fit the brand you're working for, or are you doing it just because you've seen that performs well? That again applies well to myself as well. Don't do it just because someone's seen it or someone's done it as already, and that is a massive trend on Instagram. So I think trends are overrated. I don't think that they're here to stay, or they shouldn't at least be.
I mean, that's why they're trends, right? Because if they were, they wouldn't be called trends if they were still going on, right?
Exactly, but it's like
art movements are technically trends. Fidget spinners were a trend. Remember them? Like whenever they were in.
Yeah, but it feels like this is a new thing. Therefore, all these brands are now trying to do it in this format. I know that animation and motion graphics have become a new thing. So now most brands, when they put out videos, they have them animated. And now in a year or so, it's going to be all 3D animation. So it's like, stick to your brand and don't worry about following trends. Do what you like.
Yeah, I think something that really hits that on the head is that Simon Sinek, his book Start With Why, which I recommended in the very first Creative Corner podcast, and the idea of you have imagine like a circle, and you have like three circles overlapping each other. In the middle you've got why, then you've got how, and then you've got what. And the idea that he was trying to get across is like, these are your three things that you need to sort of like, that's what you build your business on. And there are brands that deviate from
think we've lost Max. Maybe it's me.
You back?
Are you okay? I can hear you now. Yes, lost you too. Never mind. And there we go again.
Because my internet's not going to be able to keep up this long.
Okay, don't worry.
Yeah, so brands that deviate from their why, their how, and their what, and they're essentially like their values will then fail, and they have to sort of realign the how, the when, the why, the how, and the what. And you know, we saw this with Microsoft, and we saw this with Apple, like when Steve Jobs stepped down from Apple. I forget who replaced him, but then he came back for a little bit. Same with Bill Gates as well with Microsoft. And so yeah, it's all about keeping your why and keeping your values in order to, you know, don't try not to deviate and trying to be the cool person, but you know, be the person that you actually want to be, rather than trying to be something that you're not. Like we've said before in the podcast.
Spot on.
Final question then, Denisa. For a budding young Czech Republic designer that wants to follow you in your footsteps, what advice do you have for either your younger self or any illustrator or graphic designer that wants to pursue potentially in a similar career?
Don't be afraid of failure. I know it's such a basic advice, right? But just try it. I feel like I went into a lot of classes being terrified of, like, you know, getting bad feedback. But it's fine. It helps you with your journey. You know, you will learn as you go. And if no one's going to tell you that that's bad, you're going to keep on doing it. And sometimes just get off your high horse. You know, I used to be so cocky. Now I don't care if anyone tells me that my artwork sucks. Because you know what? Cool. You're right. You know, in your eyes, that sucks. That's cool. And maybe you have valid points. You know, I'll take that criticism. But sometimes it's just personal preference. But don't be afraid of getting that negative feedback. It's not bad. It doesn't necessarily mean you've done a horrible job. It just means that someone's got either a different idea than you had, especially when it comes to client feedback. Don't feel really, you know, don't feel bad about that you've done a bad job and now, you know, you're a horrible designer. Sometimes they just don't explain themselves well. You didn't get the brief, or maybe you just need to go over it again. That's fine. You know, don't worry about being the person, you know, who asks twice. That's it. Then, you know, spending hours on a project that's going to end up, you know, not to their expectations. I guess.
Right, that's a great way to end it. We spoke a lot about expectations and how to be the person that you want to be, rather than trying to be someone you're not, and social media and all these different things that we've spoken about today. Hopefully people listening and who have, you know, dipped in and out of the stream have taken some value from. So Denisa, thank you very much for joining me today for episode 9 of Creative Corner.
Thank you for having me.
For listeners and people watching, you can follow us across all social medias at LifeProof UK for more podcasts like this, job opportunities, and more things to come in the future as well. There will be no Creative Corner next week, not necessarily because it's Valentine's Day, just because guests and that sort of thing. But hey, spending with your loved ones, why not? But we will be back on the 21st of February for episode 10. So be sure to keep an eye on our social medias for that sort of good stuff. Yeah, it's going to be a good one. So yeah, Denisa, thanks again for joining me, and hopefully we'll see everybody soon. Stay safe.
All right.